Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to share my work at the Paris International Conference on Teaching, Education, and Learning. My name is Lorenzo Cherubini, and I am a professor of education at Brock University in Ontario, Canada. I am also the former director of the Tecumseh Centre for Aboriginal Research and Education at Brock University. Let me begin with a few words of introduction. Poetic inquiry is a qualitative method that accounts for both of the participants' first-person perspectives and the researcher's interpretation in a unique and invitational presentation of data. Specifically, poetic transcription transforms the interview transcripts from the research participants into poetry. It is very much a qualitative research approach that allows the researcher to complement the voices of the research participants. This approach to research is particularly well suited for this research project that explored Indigenous community members' lived experiences in an urban-based context in Ontario, Canada. The participants were invited to the research project based on their involvement in a local friendship center that provides culturally appropriate programs to the Indigenous community, including health, social, and educational services. It should be noted, as part of my presentation, that all the partners in the project, including the Indigenous community leaders, an elder, and university educators, participated in a series of research conversations. Participants were invited to share their experiences related to the Friendship Center programs and resources that fostered their unique sense of identity and contributed to a more critical understanding of the institutional and systemic barriers in mainstream society. I, as the principal researcher, have engaged in bi-epistemic research for over 2 decades, and I value the relationships with Indigenous communities, educators, scholars, and students. Some of these projects speak directly to Indigenous peoples' experiences in educational settings, including the perceptions of Indigenous students and school community members in provincially funded public schools in Ontario. I have also collaborated on research projects that focus on the implications of provincial education policy on Indigenous student engagement and on prospective teachers' expectations of addressing Indigenous students' needs in mainstream classrooms and schools. In terms of the methodological approach to this research, the transcripts from the research conversations were served as the data and were analyzed using grounded theory. Now, some of you may be familiar with the grounded theory approach, driven principally by Strauss and Corbin, whereby the coding of the data and the constant comparison of emerging ideas and concepts are, generally speaking, saturated. And in this case, for this particular research, were saturated into 3 themes, identified as 1, education as a lived reality, 2, sense of well-being, and 3, resolving tensions. However, the intent of this presentation is not to discuss the themes grounded in the data according to the more standard reporting approaches of qualitative analysis. Instead, it is to share the poems that emanated from the respective themes using poetic transcription. The poems thus are meant to share the researcher's intensely personal encounter with the moments shared by the participants themselves, in a manner that then invites the reader, the audience, into the encounter of another's experience. The research conversation transcripts are chosen purposefully in terms of their potential to describe the unique experiences shared by the participants themselves. I turn as an example to the researcher Glesny, who explains the process in these terms. Quote, I found myself, through poetic transcription, searching for the essence conveyed, the hues, the textures, and then drawing from all portions of the interviews to juxtapose details into a somewhat abstract representation, somewhat like a photographer who lets us know a person in a different way. End of quote. Consider, therefore, the context of the respective themes as they're shared in this methodology of poetic transcription. So I'll share the poem that relates to the first theme, entitled Education as a Lived Reality. Throughout the research conversations, the Indigenous community participants described how fundamental aspects of identity were understood in the broader experiences of their lives, including education. So the following poem is an outcome of my encounter with the data. Knowledge shared through storytelling. The stories of the elders. Listening. Just kind of taking it in. A story. Their story. Not written in textbooks. School, it was just a question. And then a straight answer. The Friendship Center brings different teachings, a journey, learning from the elders, from others, at the center, with different people, figuring things out in different ways, connecting the culture, connected to the people, to even the way they taught. It's just better working with the elders. Probably learned more than I ever learned in university. Out in the field, doing things, sitting with her through colonization, residential schools. We've lost a lot. Still a long way to go to get our culture back, especially in the urban. In school, there was no support. Learning about culture and stories. Interesting. Learning about someone's life who's been through a lot. You can actually take it in. Learn those lessons. Different people. Listen to different people. Become a better person. Through storytelling. Yeah. I invite you to read the paper that includes the poems that reflect the other two themes in this particular analysis. For now, however, I bring to light the fact that a hallmark of the poetic inquiry approach rests predominantly in its potential to provide the researcher with the necessary freedom to exercise both analysis and creative expression. In the process, the researcher can, as Glesny suggests, invite the highly personal encounter with the stories themselves by reflecting purposefully on the essence of the individual and collective experiences. This is not quite clearly a traditional, or at least a traditionally empirical methodological approach to research. It is, however, a means to create expressions that provide personal abstract representations of participants' experiences that may themselves be accessible to the reader and to the unique circumstances that each reader brings to the poem. The poems shared in this manuscript that will be published as part of the proceedings of our conference emanate directly from my encounter with the data. They are not reflective of the thoughts of any other member of the research team, nor are they representations of the perspectives of any individual that participated in the research project. In this way, the poems reflect my genuine learning in the context of my encounter with participants' stories. Significant to the process, the poems invite readers to the encounter. They offer a platform for further discussion. Poetic inquiry, different from more traditional methodologies, welcomes the reader's encounter with the shared moments described in the poems and allows them to remain at a distance from the stories of the participants. The researcher's experiences, as described in the scope of each poem, invites a consideration of the issues grounded in the data in a potentially more pronounced manner. Last, poetic inquiry encourages researchers to share poems that can, in many respects, provide moments of acknowledgement that allow readers to engage in the experiences through the lenses that are most relevant to their lives. Thank you for the opportunity to present my work, and I hope you enjoy the conference.